Hey everybody, welcome to That Guy's House. I'm Sean Patrick and I'm here with the incredible Seryna Myers today. Sorry, I got to jump because it mirrors us. I'm here with the incredible Seryna Myers today. She is a Sacred Soul mentor and author of the brand new book, Sacred Anger. Seryna, how are you doing today?
I am great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited for this chat.
My absolute joy. And like I said, I've not actually got to chat to you very much over the book production process. So it's great to have this time.
Yeah.
Huge congratulations on the book being out.
Thank you. It has been, the people who have been able to get it so far have sent me just the most beautiful feedback. I am moved. One woman messaged me this morning saying she was already on her second read of it. And I was just like, oh my God, how is this even a thing? So
Yeah, I mean, I completely get it. And that jumps right into like the first thing I wanted to speak to you about. This is not something that is spoken about in our world of spirituality and self-help. People do not talk about anger. And I just think it's so underrepresented, it's so suppressed. And I'm just like, wow, like I completely stand by this book being just so huge in regards to we can no longer say people aren't talking about this message because you are. So thank you so much for putting it down on paper. But where did that come from, deciding to write a book about anger? Because it's not automatically a sexy topic, so to speak.
No,
It's not unicorns. It's not, you know what I mean?
It's not sparkly and fun, and particularly for the spiritual community. I think that that suppression of anger that we have is actually a really big disservice to our people. And because it's human, because we get there, regardless of the work that we've done. I've been on my journey for 14 years and I still get pissed off. Like, it's just a thing that happens. And I used to really shame myself for it. I really saw it. I had that same programming that everybody else did, that it was something that needed to be managed or needed to be released or transmuted. And yes, like it does, but also, like, what are the lessons in it? What can we get from it? What is it here to teach us? Because nothing happens just for the sake of it. Like, there is a reason this has come up. And particularly when we're living on a path where we're bringing consciousness to everything that we think and say and feel and do, why are we not bringing consciousness to anger?
Like, absolutely. And it's so, in my own spiritual journey, I really feel like I've been propelled since 2021 came in by sitting in the power that anything has for me, whether that's an unpleasant experience, whether the feeling is low down on that scale of shame or grief or anger. I actually don't think anger is low down on the seeming consciousness scale, but whether or not whatever feeling I'm having, it's that lesson of sitting in the power this has for me. And that doesn't exclude anger.
And I think it's there. It speaks to the willingness that you have, because it's not, we're hardwired for comfort. Let's be honest, right? Human beings, they want it to be comfy and cozy. So for us to actively choose to be in discomfort takes a lot of courage and bravery. And it says a lot about your willingness to be authentically in that moment and what it's presenting to you. It's huge.
Yeah. Jumping right into where the book begins, you talk about anger being a mask for something bigger. And for me, this was like good flashbacks of when I was 21 years of age and I was reading the Course in Miracles, and it's one of the very first lessons of A Course in Miracles. It says, I'm never upset for the reason that I think. And I never forgot that. Like, I don't practice the Course in Miracles anymore, but I never forgot that. And in my life, it's like, if something comes up that makes me upset, using their language, I'm always aware, no, there's something behind this. And you bring that message to the table under the topic of anger. Anger is a mask for something bigger. Can you tell us more about what you think about that?
Yeah, for as uncomfortable as it is, it's sometimes the more comfortable option than some of these other emotions, particularly the really sensitive and vulnerable ones. For me, I grew up like in a pretty rough area with a shenanigans. Like, it was not the safest, funnest place to be.
That's a good place to put it, shenanigans.
I'm being a bit euphemistic here, but and it hardens you. And that hardness often comes, like, anger becomes the mask for the hardness. And really what it's saying is, I'm afraid. I'm disappointed. I'm let down. I'm sad. I'm lonely. I'm feeling disconnected. I'm looking for my people. I feel like an outsider. And it's a lot easier to hide behind anger or a chip on your shoulder than it is to actually say that to the world. Now it's a little bit better, but like in the 80s and 90s, like, people would look like you had 3 heads if you were just like, I'm feeling really vulnerable right now. You know what I mean? That's a conversation we're having now, but it wasn't then.
Thank God we've grown.
Sorry?
I said, thank God we've grown.
Thank God. Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes.
There's a really great little saying in the book, which I've just noted down in so many places. And it's the subheading, I have permission to be pissed off.
Yes.
And what I love about this is, and this is something that is being spoken about more, but I don't believe it's being practiced very much. We commit a spiritual bypass all the time. We suppress our uncomfortable, seemingly uglier feelings. And I did that for so long to such little benefit.
Because they're still there. They're just waiting.
100%. And that is where I swear I feel like I'm on a spiritual, I feel like I'm just boom, boom, boom right now. Because if something comes my way, like I said, I sit in it and think, oh, there's power here for me. And even if that means pissed off. So I love that you have a subheading in the book and a whole section on the permission to be pissed off. Please tell me more about your view on that.
So I always whenever I think about that statement, I think about in the cartoons where they have the closets that people just keep putting things in, and then eventually you open up the door and the cartoon has all the stuff that falls out of the closet. That's what we do with our anger. It's just like put away until we can't anymore. What I think is really cool is that the more that we're embracing it, the more that we're, people who are being really transparent with their path, the more we're talking about how ugly it gets sometimes. Like my whole podcast is dedicated to the truth of what it means to live a spiritual life rather than, the sparkly, shiny unicorns and whatever. It's like sometimes it's super ugly. Yeah. And I think the more that we have these conversations, the more that people who are listening and watching are able to be like, oh, wait a minute, that's me too. So that when they find themselves in those crappy places, they're not shaming and beating themselves up in the way that you and I did. They're able to be like, oh yeah, but I read that book, or, oh yeah, I heard that episode, or something that will just resonate to give them the permission that it's okay to feel exactly what they feel, that it's completely normal and part of the process.
I mean, you said the word that was on my lips there, which was shame. I think back, I like to think I'm grown now, but maybe I'll think the same 10 years down the line. But when I was in my early mid-20s and I was starting out as a spiritual teacher, quote unquote, it was this pressure to have it all figured out, to be super together, to be super understanding. And I don't know what, not only is that impossible, I've also come to learn that's not necessarily the most spiritual path. That's a phony path.
And it's not relatable because it puts that same pressure on the people who are learning.
You want to know what? I completely agree with this because I'm a big connoisseur of TV. I'll put it that way. I love watching TV shows. Not huge into movies. I love watching TV shows. And the protagonist is always flawed because that's relatable and interesting. And I did think, shoot, what a shame that the protagonists we see in spirituality and self-help are so healed and together. I was like, that's a damn shame. I think things have really moved on from them. I'm talking the early 2010s. We're in a whole different decade. But I just love that there's more books like this. You spoke about the closet and people putting it in until it all falls out. I know you address this in the book, but what do you feel are the consequences of unexpressed anger?
So I'm not a doctor, so I won't preach about this too far, but there are definitely different physical manifestations of anger, right? So we see increases in heart problems and certainly digestive issues, and it has a really big impact on us. I spent 3 years working in neurofeedback, so I looked at brains for 3 years and brain patterns and how they behaved, and anger definitely locks in. But the really beautiful thing about our brains, though, is this concept of neuroplasticity. So they are very changeable. Whenever something happens, if we have, let's say, a brain injury, the brain will learn to rewire itself and redirect the impulses so that it can keep going and keep existing. So if we want to change something like anger, even if it's what we've known for our entire lives, and we're only willing to open up to this idea that it's possible for it to be different when we're in our 40s, the brain is able to make those changes. We can transform stuff. So that's what's really cool about it. But there is definitely a physical cost. There's definitely an emotional cost in how, if it's our anger, it's how trustworthy other people feel us to be, and how willing they are to be open and vulnerable with us and to connect. If it's other people's anger, it's how safe we are to feel our entire selves and how we want to show up in our relationships. So, you know what I mean? it really touches almost every single part of your life. The angriest people I know have hard times keeping jobs or keeping relationships. And all of this comes down to how they're able to show up in the world and their willingness to do the work to make that different if they're not happy with it.
Yeah, you know, what you're saying has just reminded me of something I heard in a Marianne Williamson lecture years ago. Haven't thought about it forever. She says people who express anger are not angry people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, wow, and I'd forgotten about that, but thanks for reminding me through this content.
Because you can. When you're actually in it, you can't really talk about it constructively.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you need to be able to almost step out of it or let it do its thing and then come back and reflect on it, come back and talk about it. It's in the moment, you're more likely to do more harm in the moment.
Yeah. There's a great graph in the book, which I love, which is like the wheel of anger. And I'll go into the specifics. I know in my book, I speak about something really similar, like you accept it, you feel it, and you move on. But there's a part to your diagram which takes it a step further, which I'm really excited to speak about. Identify the anger, acknowledge it, feel it, and then you say to move it. And I found that such a really interesting concept to apply to anger. You move it. One, what do you mean by that? And two, how do you, or what one example could you give us to move anger?
So if I was treating this as a purely spiritual book, I would have used words like transmute or release or whatever. But I also wanted this to be a bit muggle friendly. So move seemed to be the easier thing.
Well, I'm half muggle, so that's good.
Perfect. Okay. So let me talk to both of your halves then.
Thank you.
So from the spiritual side of it, that can be ceremony, it can be ritual, it can be Reiki, it can be cord cutting. Like I work with angels as a big part of mine, right? So there's all these different things that we can do on the spiritual and energetic level to say like, okay, anger, like you've been here, you taught me what you're going to do, then get on with it. But for people who maybe don't want to take that approach, and this is also open to spiritual people as well, is where we're making it more grounded. So we're going for a run, we're having a solo dance party, we are doing like some really deep breathing, any type of breath work. Trying to think of things off the top of my head. All these different things where we're actually just saying, okay, anger, like you are an energy, like you are not a thing, you are not me, you are an energy that I'm experiencing. Yeah. And now it's time to go. So it's just finding ways to get that moving through you. And drinking so much water is like huge when we're doing this work. Supports the body big time.
You know, let me tell you this, another blast from the past. I used to be a big follower of Abraham Hicks. And someone asked them in the hot seat once, you know, what's the one piece of advice you can give? And they said, drink copious amounts of water. I never forgot that. And I do. So yeah, it's really cool to have that, to hear that same lesson from yourself. Drink copious amounts of water, because you are right. Anger is an energy, and so often we have to just move. We have to move that energy. And I think about, and once again, like you, I'm not a doctor. I don't want to speak out of turn, but there's been such a rise in, you know, poor mental health during this coronavirus pandemic where we've been locked down. And I think energy is simply not having the experience to move. And I know in myself, I notice anxiety coming up. I notice them lower vibration feelings coming up. But with one interaction, with one walk, that energy has moved through me. So but our lives used to be more conducive to allowing energy to move. So
if we allow it, though, I think sometimes we get really invested in our anger, or we believe it to be who we are. Like you hear people that are just like, oh yeah, he's just a really angry guy. But like anger is just something he's experiencing. That's not actually our identity. It's not who we are. So we have to be willing to say like, well, maybe it doesn't have to be this way. If you're not happy with it, if you're happy being angry, then by all means have at her. But like most of us aren't.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think most of us can identify when we feel angry, we don't feel good. But I do think like I'm a student of this scale of consciousness. But anger is not low. You know what I mean? Because energy is moving. You have, you know, it's much higher than depression, grief, shame.
Because it can get things done.
They can get things done.
Yeah,
and
we can use it as
motivation. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Well, with that, I mean, you've pretty much said so much of it, but I want to rewind. Part 2 of the book is called Understanding Anger. And I really love, because you've addressed it so much, but if there's anything more you can say, because I think it's really I'm not going to say it's the most important step in the book. For me, it's the most something warm about, I'm going to understand my anger. I'm going to, sit it down for a cup of coffee almost.
Yeah.
Why do you believe it's important we understand anger, and what can we do to do that?
I think when we understand why it's coming up for us and all the things that have contributed to that moment, we can have so much more compassion for ourselves or compassion for the other person who's experiencing anger.
Yeah.
And once we bring compassion in, shame doesn't have any room to be there.
Yeah.
It's so important. And it really, it just gives us, I feel like that's almost where the transmutation happens. Yeah, you still want to move the energy, but once compassion enters the ring, the game's kind of almost over, like right there.
You see, I told you just something about that felt warm to me. Yeah. So I made a note that I want to look at part 2 specifically, because it just felt like a warm hug, like you were, because I think we resist our anger unless we're expressing it at full form, which doesn't feel good. But you used the word compassion. To have compassion for it just feels really lovely. And I knew that reading that part of the book, I was like, my anger. Yeah.
A lot of my clients have talked about working with me as like sitting down and being with a big sister. And so I really wanted to write from that perspective too, where it was like, I'm not going to tell you that I've got it all figured out. I'm still human. I still have anger as well. But this is what I've learned about it and how we can do it. And I feel like when we have that kind of warm approach to it, we can take a topic that is otherwise like, ooh, we want to avoid that. And suddenly it becomes something that we're open to considering. Yeah. And we can do so much of that just by making it a cozy process. It doesn't have to be hard and intense and laborious. It can actually be really beautiful and really gentle.
And you can reclaim your power, which is what you express in the book. And to me, that's exactly how it feels. Even if it's warm, even if it's lovely, even if it's cozy, you're still reclaiming your power. And anger specifically is something we often feel like has power over us.
Absolutely.
So reclaiming our power towards anger is really important. I know I don't want to give too much away. Go out and get a copy of the book, Sacred Anger by Seryna Myers, but it does share some wonderful lessons towards the end about reclaiming power. If you could just soothe us one last time with your wisdom on this topic.
Yeah, you bet.
How do we reclaim our power over anger?
So the reason why anger always feels like it has power over us is because we've been pushing it down and burying it down. And by the time it gets expressed, we don't have control over it in that moment. And then we're not even just angry. We're not expressing just the anger of the situation that has taken place, but everything that we have buried down. And so what I find is that the more I deal with things as they come up, the more that I honor my boundaries and I speak my truth and I say what I actually mean, and I'm not passive aggressive or anything along those lines. Yeah. The less that goes, buried away, the less that gets tucked into that already full closet. So then whenever anger comes up, I am in control. I'm able to speak from a place of my heart and of my truth. I'm not doing hurt or damage with anything, and I am in control. It's when we push it down, we bury it, and then it explodes. That's when we don't have that control. And, we think about, like taking back our power as this, like, I almost imagine like this warrioress and the sword in the hand and whatever, but it actually isn't that at all. It's actually power in the little moments that add up to a fully reclaimed life.
Yeah. And, the book cover is this gorgeous explosion of color, which I think perfectly encapsulates your view of anger, is that actually it can be a really beautiful thing. There's no denying it's something filled with energy, motivation. There's no denying it's a firework, but as a firework, it can also be really beautiful.
If we let it, yeah.
If we let it, yeah. So I do just want to once again commend you, going right back to the beginning. Thank you for writing a book on a topic.
Thank you for publishing it.
My absolute pleasure. Please, if we didn't publish this book, we would not be true to our values, real, raw wellness, So I'm so thankful. I love that the book is out there. Go out and get your copy of Sacred Anger. And it's just been a pleasure to speak to you. And I feel like I couldn't believe it. I looked at our time and I was like, shoot, we're almost done. And I felt like we were just getting started, but let's have this be one of many conversations with you, because it's incredible. My honor to be the publisher. Go out and get your copy of Sacred Anger. It is available anywhere books are sold online. And I look forward to hearing what everyone's got to say about that warm, cozy feeling I had, which is making friends with your anger, so to speak. Seryna, where can people find you?
Seryna.ca is the easiest place. And for the book, sacredangerbook.com will take you to all the worldwide vendors.
Incredible. So much love to everybody. Happy Tuesday. So great to spend it with you, Seryna.
Yes, thank you.
Goodbye.